नारायण गोसाई महाराज श्री गुरुदेव की जय। नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मान श्री भक्ति वेदांत वामन गोसाई महाराज की जय। नितिल प्रविष्टम विष्णुपाद अशतर शतस्मान श्री भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट महाभगवत श्री गोक्षर बाबूजी महाराज की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट श्री सच्चिदानंद भक्ति विनोद ठाकुर की जय। नितिल प्रविष्ट वैष्णव सार्वभौम श्री जगन्नाथ दास बाबूजी महाराज की जय। श्री रूप गौरिय गुरु वर्ग की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भट्टदास रघुनाथ शार गोसाई प्रभु की जय। श्री स्वरूप दामोदर राय रामानंदारी श्री गौर प्रसाद वृंद की जय। नाम चय श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुर वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट विराट गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री मुन देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग माया की जय। श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। Also, for anybody who wants it, I'm just putting, if you'd prefer to watch this on YouTube, I'm just putting the YouTube link in the comments. Okay. All right, let me share my screen. Hari Bol, Raseshwari Mataji. So I'm starting half an hour early today so that we can read this summary of the third canto. And then as soon as I finish this, then I'll start our fourth canto reading. I don't know how long this is going to take. So hopefully it doesn't eat into too much of our normal Srimad Bhagavatam reading time. Okay, so picture of Maitreya speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Vidura. Okay, here's a one paragraph summary. The third and fourth cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam represent the thighs of Lord Krishna's divine body. Oh, by the way, this book is written by a devotee named Gauranga Darshan Prabhu. He wrote a full overview of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. So we're gonna, okay. So the third and fourth cantos represent the thighs of the Lord Krishna's divine body. Through the conversation of Vidura and Maitreya, the third canto describes both Sarga and Visarga. Sarga is the primary creation of material elements, done by the Supreme Lord's empowerment at every step of initial cosmic manifestation. Visarga is a secondary creation of the forms of living beings done by the determined services of Brahman. Beautiful stories like that of Jaya and Vijaya and the four Kumaras, the profoundly moving prayers like that of Brahma's unto the Supreme Lord, and thought-stimulating conversations of illustrious personalities like Vidura and Uddhav are presented in the third canto. While Lord Varaha's pastimes create special exhilaration in the reader's heart, Kardama Muni and Devahuti exemplify ideal family life. Finally, Lord Kapila Dev's teachings introduce the reader to the deepest philosophical experiences available to mankind. One second, I just want to check and see if the settings are good. Okay, that looks all good. Yep, okay. And screen's getting shared, yes, okay. Okay, so King Parikshit, he's saying, please describe when and where the discussion between Maitreya and Vidura took place. The inquiries of saintly Vidura must have been significant, highly purposeful, and adored by learned people. King Parikshit earnestly asked Shukadeva Goswami. Being pleased with his eagerness, Shukadeva Goswami first described the circumstances that led to Vidura's leaving Hastinapur. An abuse that led to absorption. Blinded by the selfish desire to install his dishonest sons as the rulers, Dhritarashtra had set fire to the lacquer house to burn his fatherless nephews, the Pandavas. He did not forbid Dushashan's abominable act of dragging Draupadi by the hair into the assembly, although she was weeping helplessly. Dhritarashtra and party cheated Yudhishthir in the fateful gambling match and later refused his rightful share of the kingdom, disregarding even Krishna's advice on this matter. During this time of Kaurava's dishonest maneuvering, pure-hearted Vidura advised Dhritarashtra, return the legitimate share of the kingdom to the Pandavas, who have been tolerating all your offenses. Lord Krishna is on their side, and all the kings and Yadus are with Krishna. If at all you wish your good, there's words missing here. So if at all you wish good fortune for the entire family, immediately get rid of your offense-personified son, Duryodhan. Hearing this, sinful Duryodhan was swollen with anger and insulted faithful Vidura. Who called this son of a maidservant here? He betrays those upon whom he subsisted and spies in the interest of the enemies. Drive him away from the palace with only his breath to carry. Pierced by the sharp words, Vidura left his brother's palace. He understood the influence of Maya on arrogant Duryodhan, who was heading towards his own ruination. At the same time, Vidura saw how the Lord was availing him the opportunity to absorb himself exclusively in bhakti. Vidura was always pure in actions and pious in intentions. Yet he thought that he had become contaminated in the company of duplicitous Dhritarashtra and diplomatic Duryodhan. Thus he considered himself unfit to associate with Lord Krishna right away. To purify himself, he traveled to various holy places, dressed as a mendicant. He eventually reached Prabhas Kshetra in the current Indian state of Gujarat. By this time, the Kurukshetra battle was over, and Yudhishthir had rightfully gained control over the earth. Further years passed as Vidura crossed through various provinces, finally reaching the bank of the Yamuna, where he met Uddhav, an intimate associate and cousin of Lord Krishna. Remembrance and separation is union. Let me just check the comments. Okay. Vidura embraced Uddhav and inquired about the well-being of the Yadus. Uddhav, lost in loving remembrance of Krishna and separation, remained silent. After coming back to external consciousness, Uddhav spoke. What can I speak of our welfare? The Krishna sun has set, and this universe has become unfortunate. Krishna appears by his internal potency and his eternal form, just suitable for human pastimes that astonish even Lord Vishnu. His form is the ornament of all ornaments. Uddhav savored Krishna's divine beauty and described his divine qualities. In separation, he recollected the apparent contradictory behavior of Krishna. Though all-powerful, how Krishna fled from Mathura and lived in Vraj out of fear of Kamsa. How he begged pardon from his parents for his inability to serve them. How he showed compassion even to those who acted inimically towards him. How he gave liberation to the envious Shishupal. How he gave the position of a motherly nurse to the unchaste Putana who tried to kill him with her poisoned breasts. Who can be more merciful than Krishna? Uddhav then briefly narrated all the enchanting pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan, Mathura, Dwarka, and Hastinapur, and so on. Departure of the divine. Uddhav continued, having accomplished the purpose of his descent in this world, Krishna plans for his departure to his eternal abode. But before that, he decided to dispatch his own clan, the mighty Yadus. By the will of the Lord, once the great sages cursed the Yadus when the young Yadu princes mocked them. Later, at Prabhaskshetra, the Yadus drank liquor, and while thus intoxicated, they used harsh words, fought, and destroyed each other. These events will be described in detail in Canto 11. Lord Krishna witnessed all of this, went away, and sat down under a tree on the bank of river Saraswati. But previously in Dwarka, Krishna had taught me Uddhav Gita and instructed me to give his message to the sages of Badarik Ashram. Though being unable to bear any separation from him, I followed him to Prabhaskshetra. There I saw him alone, resting against a young banyan tree. At that time, Maitreya Rishi also appeared there on account for some rare good fortune. Krishna then addressed me, and Maitreya also listened attentively and submissively. Krishna spoke to Uddhav. I know your heart's desire for my association. Your present life is the last. Smeared in tears, Uddhav said, O my Lord, I am anxious to serve your lotus feet. If you think I am competent, kindly explain the knowledge of yourself, which you have spoken to Brahma, the Chatushloki. By that I will be able to cross over the ocean of sorrow after your disappearance. Lord Krishna then instructed Uddhav about his transcendental situation, Paramam Stitam, his dealings with devotees in Dwarka and Mathura and Vrindavan, which he had not spoken even to Brahma in the Chatushloki. Then Krishna told Uddhav to proceed to Badarik Ashram. It was Krishna's desire that Uddhav should remain in this world to disseminate divine knowledge about him for the welfare of all coming generations. Etiquettes of seeking and giving knowledge. Uddhav thus narrated all these events to Vidura and prepared to leave for Badarik Ashram. Humble Vidura then expressed his desire to hear from Uddhav the self-knowledge that he had received from Krishna. But Uddhav, although competent, couldn't accept elderly and honorable Vidura as a disciple, especially when Maitreya was nearby at Haridwar. He was careful about Maryada Vyatikram, or the offense of surpassing a greater personality. Uddhav guided Vidura to elderly Maitreya, who was also directly instructed by Krishna, and then left. Vidura approached Maitreya at Haridwar on the bank of the Ganges. He humbly said, in this world, everyone works for happiness, but they often encounter distress. Please give us directions on how to attain real happiness. Great devotees travel on earth just to show compassion on ignorant people. Kindly give instructions on bhakti. Describe about the Purush avatars and Leela avatars of the Lord. Just as a bee sucks honey, the essence of a flower, please speak Krishna Katha, the essence of all topics. Those who glorify Krishna are the real friends of all distressed living beings. Artha Bandhu. Maitreya Rishi felt honored and expressed his gratitude and appreciation for Vidura. O Vidura, by your Krishna-conscious inquiries, you showed mercy both to me and this world. Being born from Vyasadeva, you have accepted the Lord without deviation. I know that you are Yamaraj, who now became Vidura due to the curse of Mandavya Muni. Material creation by the Supreme Spirit. Maitreya first elaborately described the creation of the material universe, already presented in the second canto. In the course of creation, the gross and subtle material elements once formed. In the course of creation, the gross and subtle material elements once formed were meant to combine together to form the universe and different bodies within it. But the elements couldn't do so on their own without the Lord's help. Consequently, the presiding deities of these elements began to offer prayers to Lord Mahavishnu. O Lord, your lotus feet are the umbrella that protect the surrendered devotees from the rains of material miseries. Your feet, the source of river Ganges, vanquish all sinful reactions, reveals knowledge, inspires detachment, and bestows courage. Materialistic people cannot approach them, but devotees who relish your pastimes can approach your lotus feet. We seek your directions, knowledge, and potency so that we can be united to render you the service for which we are created. In response to these prayers, Lord Mahavishnu sent his cohesive energy that amalgamates the different elements. In this way, the elements combined to form the gigantic universe are the universal form, the Virat Rup. Maitreya then said in great humility, "Who can estimate Lord Krishna's unparalleled potency by which he manifests this gigantic material universe? In spite of my inability, I glorify the Lord with whatever I have been able to hear from my Guru, Yatha Shrutam, and assimilate with my intelligence, Yatha Mati. Otherwise, my power of speaking would remain unchaste. Glorifying Krishna is the highest gain of human speech. His activities are wonderfully put in writing by the learned, and the very purpose of the ears is served by hearing these narrations." Purpose of his creation and cause of our misery. Inquisitive Vidura further asked Maitreya, "Why does the Lord create, maintain, and destroy the universe, despite being self-satisfied and free from mundane desires? And how does the pure soul, the jiva, suffer in spite of the Lord's presence in the heart as Paramatma?" Maitreya first clarified the position of the Lord. To say that the Lord's creation pastimes are because he is also overcome by illusion, Maya, or entangled by the modes, the gunas, and bound by material mundane desires, is against all logic. Maya and its gunas are his energies, and the energies cannot control the energetic Lord, like they bind an ordinary jiva. Maitreya then explains the cause of the jiva's distress. If one's head is cut off, one cannot see oneself, but one can see one's head cut off if one is in a dream. Similarly, for the spirit soul, there is no factual understanding. Suffering exists only due to the spirit soul's misidentification with matter, false ego, which is like a dreamy situation. As the moon reflected on water appears to tremble, being associated with the quality of water, the self similarly appears to be material due to its association with matter in the form of false ego. This delusion can be dispelled by taking to bhakti yoga. Simply by chanting and hearing about Krishna, one can achieve cessation of unlimited miserable conditions. So then what to speak of having attraction to serving Krishna? Simply by hearing about Krishna, one can achieve cessation of unlimited. What to speak of having attraction to serving him? Feeling himself obliged, Vidura expressed his gratitude to Maitreya for enlightening him. I am now convinced about the insubstantiality of the material world, but I can realize it only by serving great devotees like you. Service to pure devotees is rare and enables one to develop love of God and dispels all material distress. Vidura then requested Maitreya to explain about Sarga, Visarga, Manvantara, the Lord's avatars, Varnashram, Yoga, Gyan, and so on. Maitreya responded, Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken to mitigate the miseries of common people who worked hard for a meager amount of material happiness. It was first spoken by Lord Sankarshan to sage Sanat Kumar, who explained it to Sankyayan Muni, who then spoke it to Parashar and Brihaspati. Parashar spoke it to me. Creating the Creator. Maitreya Rishi then described the appearance of Brahma. Inside the universe, Garbhodakshayi Vishnu, lying on the Garbhodak ocean, glanced on the living beings who were merged within his body. A lotus sprouted from his navel and illuminated everything in the universe. Self-born Lord Brahma took birth in the lotus. Searching for the root of the lotus, Brahma entered its stem, but couldn't trace out its root. Giving up his unsuccessful search, he came back to the top and meditated on the Lord for 100 years. Brahma could then see the gigantic body of Sheshnak, upon whom Garbhodakshayi Vishnu was lying alone. He was looking splendorous with his shining bodily luster, ornaments, moon-like toenails, yellow cloth, Shivatsa mark on the chest, and so on. He acknowledged the service of his devotees with his enchanting smile that vanquished their distress. Brahma then began to offer heartfelt prayers to the Lord, seeking empowerment to carry out his service of creation from the ingredients created by the Lord already. Brahma said, O Lord, you are the supreme knowable object, having the most auspicious form. You dwell in the hearts of those devotees who smell the aroma of your lotus feet and see you in their favorite forms. Through their ears, that is by hearing the scriptures. Please empower me with the necessary intelligence to create. Please protect me from the false pride of being the creator. May I not get deviated from the Vedic injunctions. You are unlimitedly merciful. Please bestow your benediction upon me by opening your lotus eyes. Thus Brahma was fearful of fall down and prayed for protection. Lord Vishnu then spoke to Brahma. Do not be anxious and depressed about the execution of creation. By performing austerity, tapa, you will receive my favor and thus understand within your heart everything you need to know about creating all the universal manifestations. Since your mind is fixed on me, passion will not bind you. I quickly fulfill all the desires of one who prays regularly like you. Following my instructions, you may now generate the living beings as they had existed before in various bodily forms. After thus instructing Brahma, the Lord disappeared. Determined service despite difficulties. As advised by Lord Vishnu, Brahma meditated for 100 celestial years, and thus acquired transcendental knowledge from within. He then of the all-expansive lotus, and first divided it into 3 divisions, and later into 14 divisions. He could thus create the 14 worlds suitable for the habitation of different types of living beings. Brahma first created the 5 features of ignorance, avidya, namely 1. Tama, unawareness of one's real spiritual identity as a soul, being an eternal servant of God. 2. Moham, thinking oneself to be a material body with associated temporary designations. 3. Mahamoham, possessiveness towards temporary material objects. 4. Tamishram, anger arising from frustration of material aspirations. And 5. Andatamisram, sense of death for the self. Moham, Mahamoham, Tamishram, Andatamisram. Oops, I skipped one. Tama. I skipped Tama, Moham, Mahamoham, Tamisram, and Andatamisram. Those are the 5 features of ignorance. Okay. These 5 elements bind the living beings in various miseries, yet such creation was necessary, as explained further. Lord Krishna is a supreme source, proprietor, enjoyer, controller, and master of all living beings, who are his tiny parts. Just as a bodily limb is meant to serve the whole body, the living beings are meant to serve the complete whole, Lord Krishna. In service, they enjoy the ultimate bliss of exchanges with Krishna. But some jivas desire to imitate God and try to become independent controllers, masters, proprietors, and enjoyers. This material creation is meant to house such people who are averse to loving and serving God. For them to exercise their selfish desires, to enjoy independent of God, they need to be forgetful of their real position as servants of God. Thus, as a matter of necessity, Brahma created the 5 features of ignorance, avidya, to facilitate material enjoyment by spiritual souls averse to God. Brahma wasn't pleased by such misleading creation for the sake of the rebel souls. Unhappy with his first set of creation, Brahma purified his mind by meditating upon the Lord He asked the Kumar, but they refused to do so because they were devoted to Vasudeva, and they aimed only at liberation and wished to remain celibates forever. The Kumar's denial made Brahma slightly angry, but he tried to control it. Yet his anger came out from between his eyebrows in the form of a child with blue and red complexion. Lord Brahma named the child Rudra and designated 11 places for his residence: the heart, senses, air of life, sky, air, water, fire, earth, sun, moon, and austerity. It's a lot of places. It's pretty much everywhere. Brahma also offered him 11 wives called the Rudranis and asked him to create progeny. Rudra then created progeny similar to himself in strength, form, and furious nature. True to their nature, they attempted to devour the universe instead of expanding it. This scared Brahma. Brahma then restricted Rudra and asked him to perform austerity. Rudra agreed and went to the forest. Brahma then created 11 sons from different parts of his own body. They are Narad, Vishishta, Daksha, Bhrigu, Kratu, Pulastya, Angira, Atri, Marichi, Pulaha, and Kardama. Except Narad Muni, all others were engaged in creating progeny and populating the universe. Brahma also created Dharma and Adharma, and the factors instigating Adharma: lust, desire, anger, greed, etc. During all these creative affairs, Brahma once got attracted to his daughter Vak, though she wasn't welcoming of his advances. Seeing Brahma deluded in this way, his sons, headed by Marichi, respectfully tried to dissuade him. As their efforts failed, they prayed to the Supreme Lord. Eventually, Brahma came to his senses and felt ashamed of his delusional state. He gave up the shameful mentality and felt remorseful. The Supreme Lord wanted to give the following grave lesson through this incident. This incident demonstrates the strength of sexual impulse and emphasizes the need to be prayerful to the Lord for protection from lust. Despite this episode, one shouldn't minimize the position of Lord Brahma or disrespect him. Brahma's power of creation and the service of the Supreme Lord did not diminish due to his momentary distraction. He was a soul surrendered to Krishna and engaged in his service. Next, Brahma created 4 Vedas and Upavedas, the Pancham Vedas, 4 legs of Dharma, 4 ashrams, arts, sciences, Vedic meters, verse writings, audible sounds, and so on. The 2 divine boars. Brahma reflected that his 10 powerful sons, including the sages, did not sufficiently increase the population of the universe. While deliberating like this, Swayambhuva, the first Manu, and his queen Shatarupa manifested from Brahma's own body. Manu was ready to abide by Lord Brahma's instruction to procreate, but he found that there was no place to populate since the earth was merged in the Garbhodaka ocean. On that occasion, Lord Shvetavaraha, the divine white boar, manifested from Brahma's nostril, entered the Garbhodak waters, and lifted the earth on his tusks. This incident happened in the Swayambhuva, the first Manvantar. Also, in the Chakshasha, the 6th Manvantar, the Lord again appeared as Rakta Varaha, and again protected the earth by killing a demon named Hiranyaksha. Maitreya then narrated the events that led to the birth of the 2 twin demons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Consequences of an untimely union. Once Diti was afflicted by lust and an intense desire for a child. She approached her husband Kashyapa Muni in the evening time for union. Kashyapa dissuaded her, saying that the time was inauspicious, and the ghosts and their master, Shiva, move about at that time. However, Diti was pressed by Cupid and pulled Kashyapa by his clothing. Not being so self-controlled, Kashyapa gave in to her advances and obliged her unreasonable appeal, uniting with her. Afterwards, Kashyapa addressed Diti in disdain. Everything was inauspicious because of your mind's pollution, defilement of time, negligence of my directions, and apathy towards demigods. As a result, you will have 2 demoniac sons who will constantly afflict the 3 worlds, kill innocent and sinless entities, torture women, engage great souls, and ultimately be killed by the Supreme Lord. Diti became repentant. Seeing her transformation and patience, Kashyapa encouraged her. Your grandson Prahlad will be a great devotee. Saintly persons will emulate his character. The Lord will be satisfied with him. Due to his sincere bhakti and divine ecstasy, he will enter Vaikuntha. This somewhat pacified the aggrieved Diti. Diti held her sons in the womb for 100 years. She wanted to delay the trouble of the demigods by her sons, and also the death of her sons at the hands of the Lord. By the force of her pregnancy, darkness spread in all directions. The demigods were perplexed and approached Brahma. Brahma then narrated the backstory of the children in Diti's womb, the devotees who became demons. Once the 4 Kumars had gone to Vaikuntha, the eternal abode of Lord Vishnu. The residents of Vaikuntha travel in gem-studded golden airplanes along with their consorts, absorbed in the glorification of Lord Hari, with no desire in their personal enjoyment. Even the birds and plants of Vaikuntha are conscious of loving service to the Lord and encourage others in their services without envy. The Kumars wished to see the Lord of Vaikuntha. They crossed 6 gates to the Vaikuntha residence of the Lord without any obstruction. When they reached the 7th gate, they were blocked by Jaya and Vijay, the doorkeepers. The Kumaras were somewhat agitated and spoke thus: "How is it that you have such discordant mentality of suspecting others? Where is the possibility of an enemy coming here in Vaikuntha? The apt punishment for you impostors is to go to the material world filled with vices." Jaya and Vijay fell at the feet of the Kumaras and prayed that they never forget the Lord. Seeing their humility, the Kumaras felt repentant. Understanding the situation, Lord Vishnu appeared there along with Lakshmi Devi. With his affectionate glance, he pacified the lamenting doorkeepers, and with his pleasing smile, he consoled the fearful Kumaras. When the breeze carrying the aroma of tulsi leaves from the Lord's lotus feet entered the nostrils of the Kumaras, they experienced change in their body and mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal Brahman. Adoring the Lord's personal form repeatedly, the Kumaras became devotees and offered prayers. Contemplating their experience, they proclaims that with bhakti, even hell is preferable to impersonal liberation. Lord Vishnu humbly apologized to the Kumaras for the offense of Jaya and Vijay. The Kumaras were bewildered and repented. "You respect the Brahmins to set an example for others. We have cursed 2 faultless men. We accept whatever punishment you ordain upon us." Then Lord Vishnu disclosed, "The punishment given by you to my doorkeepers of becoming demons in the material world was in fact ordained by me. They will very soon return to me, meditating on me in anger." The Kumaras circumambulated the Lord and departed. Lord Vishnu spoke to Jaya and Vijay. "Do not fear. This departure of yours was foretold by Lakshmi. She was angry when you stopped her while I was sleeping. Though you will have the mentality of demons, you will always think of me and serve me. I will experience pure happiness by fighting with you too." Thus Jaya and Vijay left Vaikuntha and entered Diti's womb. After describing this incident, Brahma told those demigods that the Supreme Lord alone would come to their rescue. The demigods gave up fear and departed. After 100 years of pregnancy, Diti gave birth to her twin sons. Kashyapa named them Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. Hiranyakashipu performed austerities and received boons from Brahma. He started to control all the 3 worlds. Hiranyaksha traveled all over the universe with a fighting spirit. His form, temper, and power scared the demigods. Desiring to sport, he entered the ocean and reached Vibhavari, the capital of Varuna, and provoked him for a fight. Varuna intelligently replied, "I have grown too old. Only Lord Vishnu can satisfy your desire to fight." Hiranyaksha learned from Narad Muni the Lord's whereabouts and entered into the Garbhodaka ocean. There he saw the Lord in the form of a boar, Varaha, bearing the earth on his tusks. He criticized the Lord with ill names and addressed him as an animal, a forest dweller, lowest of demigods, and so on. The Lord was pained by these abusive words, but seeing that the earth was frightened, he bore the pain and rose out of the water. Varahadev challenged Hiranyaksha after a fierce battle with him. The Lord slapped him in the root of the ear. The demon fell down dead like an uprooted tree. Thus accomplishing the mission of the demigods, the Lord returned to his own abode, being glorified by them. An ideal family life. Thereafter, Vidura inquired from Maitreya on how the universe was further populated by Swayambhuva Manu's children. Swayambhuva Manu had 2 sons named Priyavrat and Uttanapad, and 3 daughters, namely Akuti, Prasuti, and Devahuti. Maitreya first described the descendants of Devahuti, who was married to Kardama Muni. Kardama Muni worshipped Lord Vishnu by performing austerities for 10,000 years, with a desire to get a suitable wife. His desire wasn't for his sense enjoyment, but to fulfill the instruction of Brahma to create progeny, which was in turn a service to Lord Vishnu. After having some children, Kardama wished to retire from active family life and dedicate himself completely to bhakti. Lord Vishnu appeared before Kardama in an enchanting form. With natural love, Kardama offered obeisances and prayers. Lord Vishnu reassured him, What you have desired for has already been arranged. Swayambhuva Manu will come here and offer his marriageable daughter Devahuti to you. She will bring forth 9 daughters from you, and through them the sages will duly beget children. You will be fully conscious of me, and I shall appear as your son, Kapila, and instruct Devahuti with a system of philosophy. Saying this, the Lord departed. As foretold by the Lord, Swayambhuva Manu came along with his wife Shatarupa and daughter Devahuti to the hermitage of Kardama Muni at Bindu Sarovar. Kardama received Manu with due honor and extolled the glories of a king who embodies the protective energy of Lord Hari. Feeling modest, Manu glorified Kardama in return. Feeling modest, Manu glorified Kardama, in return describing the glories of the Brahmins who preserved the Vedic knowledge by propagating it. As predicted by the Lord, Manu and Shatarupa conducted the marriage of Devahuti and Kardama and returned to their capital. Manu led a very Krishna-conscious life despite possessing great material opulence. Being a saintly king, he heard Krishna Katha daily and chanted the Lord's pastimes. In his long life of a Manvantar, he didn't experience material miseries as he took exclusive shelter of the Supreme Lord. Devahuti was chaste. She served her exalted husband Kardama with great love, respect, intimacy, sweet words, diligence, and purity of body and mind. She had no lust, pride, envy, greed, or vanity. Deriving inspiration from the ideal example of Devahuti, a disciple must also render service to one's guru in this way. Because of her constant service, Devahuti grew weak and emaciated. Kardama felt compassionate seeing her and offered to bestow upon her all the divine blessings he had received by performing bhakti that could make one free from fear and lamentation. When Kardama offered Devahuti the spiritual blessings of love of God, the innocent and simple-hearted Devahuti desired to bear children through him. Childbearing is indeed the most fulfilling attribute for a chaste woman. Kardama, desiring to please his wife by his mystic power, created an aerial mansion that could travel at his will. He also arranged to restore the beauty of his emaciated wife in the Bindu Sarovar lake through 1,000 young girls who served her. Then they both traveled in that airplane to various pleasure spots in the universe. Although seemingly enjoying in this way, Kardama did not lose his glory as a self-controlled person. He divided himself into 9 forms and impregnated Devahuti. On the same day, Devahuti gave birth to 9 beautiful daughters. Having fulfilled his promise of offering offspring to Devahuti, Kardama desired to leave home to pursue his real concern of spiritual perfection. Realizing her saintly husband's spiritual disposition, Devahuti found herself cheated by Maya. She humbly submitted. Not knowing of your greatness, I have associated with you for my enjoyment, and not for cultivating knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Nevertheless, associating with devotees, even in ignorance, should lead to liberation. Devahuti indirectly asked Kardama to bestow her a son who could protect her after Kardama's retirement and marriage of her daughters, and also spiritually enlighten her. This desire of Devahuti was already ordained by Lord Vishnu, who promised to Kardama that he would appear as his son. Eventually, Lord Kapila appeared from Devahuti's womb. All the demigods and celestial beings celebrated this event. Brahma appeared and predicted the future qualities and activities of Lord Kapila, who would enunciate the Sankhya philosophy. Thus blessing them, Brahma left and Kardama got his daughters married. Later, Kardama approached Lord Kapiladev, offered his prayers, and requested permission to take to renunciation. Although the Lord was directly present as a son in his own house, Kardama planned to leave home because he was accustomed to the mood of being a servant of the Lord, Dasiras, and not as a father, Vatsalyaras. His renunciation is also to set the right example of the Vedic injunction that one should give up family and homely life at a certain age to dedicatedly pursue spiritual perfection for the remainder of one's life. Lord Kapila gladly blessed Kardama, promising him that he would enlighten Devahuti and enable her to attain perfection too. Kardama at once left for the forest, and Kapila stayed at Bindu Sarovar to please his mother. A son's teachings to the mother. Just checking if everything's working okay. Looks like it. Don't see any comments. Devahuti approached Lord Kapila and said, "You have arisen like the sun that dissipates the darkness of ignorance of the universe. Please dispel my illusion of false ego and aham mameti, the conception of I and mine created by Maya." Adhyatmika Yoga. Kapila expounded, "I consider Adhyatmika Yoga, the yoga system concerning the soul, as the most beneficial path. In this yoga, the mind is the pivot. The mind attached to material modes causes bondage, and the mind attached to God causes liberation. When the mind is cleansed of lust and greed by the practice of bhakti, one becomes indifferent to material happiness and distress. Such bhakti is attained in the association of devotees, sadhus, who are tolerant, merciful, friendly, peaceful, and are dedicated to Lord Krishna. Hearing about Krishna and the association of sadhus satisfies the ears and gradually bestows love for the Lord. Practice of jnana, analytical knowledge of matter and spirit, and yoga, meditation on the Lord, are incomplete without bhakti. Bhakti. Hearing about the excellence of bhakti, Devahuti further asked Kapila, "What kind of bhakti should I perform to easily attain your lotus feet?" Lord Kapila explains, "Bhakti has to be performed without material desires. By engaging the senses in the Lord's service according to the instructions of Guru and scriptures, and with mind exclusively and spontaneously dedicated to the Lord. Those who are not ready for spontaneous bhakti, bhav bhakti, should perform bhakti according to regulative principles, vaidhi sadhana bhakti." Devahuti understood that she has to exclusively perform bhakti alone, yet she inquired from Kapila about the paths of jnana and yoga just to understand them. Sankhya. Lord Kapila first explained jnana or sankhya, analytical knowledge of matter and spirit. He describes the manifestation and the characteristics of the material elements, such as earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, ego, senses, sense objects, and so on. By knowing these, one is freed from the influence of material modes. One cuts the knot of temporary attachments, and one attains self-realization. The jiva is spiritual in nature, yet he experiences material conditions due to his meditation on sense objects for material enjoyment. Thinking himself to be the doer and false ego, the spiritual jiva binds himself to existence in the material world. The solution to this incompatible predicament of the spiritual soul is to gradually control the material mind through bhakti. One second, let me drink some water. Yoga. Kapila then explains yoga, or Ashtanga yoga, that constitutes 8 kinds of practices, like yam, niyam, and so on, as described before. By these processes, a yogi controls the unbridled mind and fixes it on the Lord. Lord Kapila elaborately described the beautiful form of Vishnu, or Krishna, and the purifying effect of meditating upon each of his limbs. In dhyan, the yogi gradually rises one's meditation from the Lord's lotus feet, then calves, thighs, hips, navel, chest, neck, ornaments, weapons, and finally his lotus face with merciful smile and glance, expressive eyebrows, raised nose, curly locks of hair, and so on. By meditation, a fortunate yogi gradually develops love for the Lord and becomes his devotee, his bhakta. An unfortunate yogi, however, withdraws his mind from the Lord's form because he is not fixed in that taste. Such a yogi is cheated of bhakti ras. Devahuti then requested Kapila to describe the path of bhakti in greater detail. Kapila explained as follows, bhakti in detail. Bhakti is the pure spiritual path beyond the material modes. But the performer of bhakti, the bhakta, can be under the influence a bhakta in passion has a bhakta in goodness worships the Lord dutifully, desiring liberation. But pure bhakti is beyond the 3 modes. Just by hearing Krishna's qualities, a pure devotee's mind runs towards him unobstructed, just as the Ganges flows to the ocean. To develop pure bhakti, one must practice detachment, worship the deities, seeing every being as spiritual, chanting Krishna's names, hearing about Krishna, associating with saintly people, and so on. These are called angas, the limbs of bhakti. In such practice, obstacles are created by offenses of disregard, hatred, and criticism of other living beings. One has to respect all beings according to their position, the gradation of jivas. A pure devotee is the highest of all. Devahuti also asked Lord Kapila about the time factor, kala, and the cycle of birth and death of conditioned souls, sangsriti. Kapila explained these topics as follows. Time. Time is the fearful feature of the Supreme Lord that causes transformation of all material manifestations. It holds no one dear. It is due to the feature of time that all the demigods perform their duties. The rivers flow, the oceans do not overflow, earth doesn't sink, and so on. Time is without beginning and end, but causes everyone's birth and death. Sangsriti. A materialist doesn't know the power of time by which all that he has acquired by hard labor is destroyed. Due to deep-rooted attraction for the body and the related paraphernalia, he performs sinful acts to maintain them. If he can counteract the miseries, he thinks himself happy. In old age, his family members do not respect him, and he remains at home like a pet dog, neglected and diseased. In his final stages, he coughs and breathes with difficulty. He lies down surrounded by lamenting relatives. After death, the Yamadutas tie him with ropes, drag him to hell while whooping him, all along a scorching road of 99,000 yojanas, traveled within 2 or 3 muhurtas. He is presented before Yamaraj and is subjected to various hellish punishments in suitable bodies. His limbs are set on fire. He is made to eat his own flesh. Tortured by the bites of serpents, scorpions, etc., his limbs are torn apart by elephants. He is hurled from hilltops, and so on. After suffering in hell, and then in many births in the lower species, the sinner is purified and attains a human birth. According to his karma, he enters a woman's womb through the particle of male semen. From the first sight till the 7th month, the embryo develops in stages. He undergoes intolerable pains in the extreme conditions of the womb. Unable to move, he lies with his head turned towards his belly and his back and neck arched like a bow. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? From the 7th month, the child attains consciousness. If he is fortunate, he remembers his actions in the past 100 births, grieves, and prays to the Lord for deliverance. Meanwhile, the air causing the childbirth, the Suti Maruta, propels him forth, and his face turned downwards. He comes out of his mother's body upside down with great difficulty, breathless, and deprived of memory due to severe agony. Smeared with stool and blood, he falls on the ground. Besides, people do not understand the baby's desires and put him into more miseries, thinking that they're taking care of him. Okay, we're almost at the end. Having had a miserable death in the past human life, having undergone severe hellish punishments for the sins committed, agonies of confinement in the womb of another mother, and unbearable birth pains, if that jiva again enters the path of sin, associating with sinful people in order to satisfy his stomach and genitals, he again enters hell as before. Conclusively, one should not associate with materialists who are no more than a dancing dog in the hands of the opposite gender. The jiva's transformation in this world is due to karma, or materialistic acts. Therefore, endowed with proper vision, reason, detachment, and devotional service, one should move about in this world of Maya without attachment. Some people work with attachment, and some work with detachment and attain different temporary destinations. But one who acts in bhakti by hearing and chanting about Krishna attains him easily. In this way, Lord Kapila gave his divine teachings to his chaste mother Devahuti. Devahuti then offered prayers to Lord Kapila. Your body is the source of all the universes, and still you put your body within the abdomen of a common woman like me. Even an outcast who chants your names, hears, remembers, or offers respect to you, immediately becomes qualified to perform Vedic sacrifices. What to speak of persons who directly see you? Having heard the words of his mother, Lord Kapila became satisfied and benedicted. By following this easy path of bhakti, you shall very soon be liberated. Lord Kapila then took permission from his mother and left for Gangasagar. He was praised by the Siddhas, Charanas, Gandharvas, sages, and Apsaras. The ocean offered him oblations and a place of residence. Even now, Lord Kapila is staying there in trance for the deliverance of the 3 worlds. All the acharyas of the system of Sankhya philosophy worship him. One who hears, reads, or expounds this knowledge becomes a devotee and attains the lotus feet and the abode of the Supreme Lord. Saintly Devahuti engaged in bhakti as instructed by her glorious son Kapila. She was sorry that her son was separated from her, yet meditating upon him, she became liberated and attained the Lord. The material elements of her body melted into water of the flowing river. Anyone who bathes there is also attained perfection. All right. So that took exactly 1 hour. Okay. I'm going to stop this video and then I'm going to start a new video and just read for like 20 minutes from the Fourth Canto. So see you all soon. Haribol.